Manachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballabha Giridharidhari Yasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Panachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Today we're going to continue. For some of you, it's a continuation of the prayers by Prahlad Maharaj to Lord Nrsimhadev. And in these prayers, you can feel Prahlad's pure devotion as well as his inconceivable compassion. He's not into his spiritual life just for himself. He's always concerned with everyone else. We're reading from the 7th canto, chapter 9, verse 42. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Konvrachrate Kila Guru Bhagavan Prayasa Ut Tadanesha Baba Sambhava Lopa Heto Mudeshu Vai Mahadanugraha Atta Bando Kim Tena Te Priya Janan Anusevatam Naha. What is that? New, indeed. Atra, in this matter. Te, of your lordship. Akila Guru, O supreme spiritual master of the entire creation. Bhagavan, O supreme Lord, O personality of Godhead. Prayasa, endeavor. Uttarane, for the deliverance of these fallen souls. Asya, of this. Bhavasambhava, of creation and maintenance. Lopa, and of annihilation. Heto, of the cause. Mudeshu, unto the foolish persons rotting in this material world. By, indeed, Mahat Anugraha, compassion by the Supreme. Arta Bandho, O friend of the suffering living entities. Him, what is the difficulty? Dana, with that. Te, of your lordship. Priya Janan, the dear persons, devotees. Anusevatam, of those always engaged in serving. Na, like us, who are so engaged. Translation. O my Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, original spiritual master of the entire world, what is the difficulty for you who manage the affairs of the universe in delivering the fallen souls engaged in your devotional service? You are the friend of all suffering humanity. And for great personalities, it is necessary to show mercy to the foolish. Therefore, I think that you will show your causeless mercy to persons like us who engage in your service. Now we'll read the purport by Srila Prabhupada. And all of you who, or some of you who may have the predilection to just read the translations of Bhagavatam, bear in mind what I often point out. Srila Prabhupada said that actually anyone can translate. It's not a big deal. Although you'll find in his word for words and his translations, they are amplified, turbocharged. But especially his purports, he said, are his devotional ecstasies. So in this purport, we're going to see that approaching Krishna directly is a fantasy, and that our aspiration should be how to be the servant of the servant. Das, das, anudas. That's the highest position in the spiritual world. So let us hear this purport. Hear the words Priya Janan Anusevatam Na indicate that the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is very favorable to devotees who act according to the instructions of his own pure devotee. In other words, one must become the servant of the servant of the servant of the Lord. If one wants to become the servant of the Lord directly, this is not as fruitful as engaging in the service of the Lord's servant. This is the direction of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who shows us the way to become Gopi Bhartu Padakamalayor Dasa Das Sanudasa. One should not be proud of becoming directly the servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Rather, one must seek a pure devotee, a servant of the Lord, and engage oneself in the service of such a servant. The more one becomes the servant of the servant, the more one becomes perfect in devotional service. This is also the injunction of Bhagavad Gita. Evam parampara praptam imam rajashayo vidu. One can understand the science of the Supreme Personality of Godhead simply by the parampara system. In this regard, Srila Narottam Das Thakur says, Tandara charana sevi bhakta sanevas. Let me serve the lotus feet of the devotees of the Lord, and let me live with devotees. Janame hoy e abhilash. Following Narottama Das Thakur, one should aspire to be a servant of the Lord's servant, life after life. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur also sings, Tumi Tat Thakur, Tomar Kukur, Bolia Jano More. Oh, my Lord, oh, Vaishnav, please consider me your dog. One must become the dog of a Vaishnava, a pure devotee, for a pure devotee can deliver Krishna without difficulty. Krishna se Toma, Krishna dite par. Krishna is the property of his pure devotee. And if we take shelter of a pure devotee, he can deliver Krishna very easily. Prahlad wants to engage in the service of a devotee, and therefore he prays to Krishna, my dear Lord, kindly give me the shelter of your very dear devotee, so that I may engage in his service, and you may then be pleased. Mad Bhakta Puja Vyadika. The Lord says, engaging in the service of my devotee is better than trying to engage in my devotional service. Another significant point in this verse is that by devotional service, Prahlad Maharaj does not want to benefit alone. Rather, he prays to the Lord that all of us fallen souls in this material world may, by the grace of the Lord, engage in the service of his servant and thus be delivered. The grace of the Lord is not at all difficult for the Lord to bestow, and thus Prahlad Maharaj wants to save the whole world by spreading Krishna consciousness. Translation again. O my Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, original spiritual master of the entire world, what is the difficulty for you who manage the affairs of the universe? In delivering the fallen souls, engage in your devotional service. You are the friend of all suffering humanity. And for great personalities, it is necessary to show mercy to the foolish. Therefore, I think that you will show your causeless mercy to persons like us who engage in your service. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya. Akshun Militam Yena Tazmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Hi, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita, Gadadhar, Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prahlad is pointing out that Krishna is the original spiritual master. And he set up a system. Krishna has set up a system that you reconnect to him through his servants. And he gives the most effective applied spiritual technology for reconnecting to him. That is by our becoming servant of the servant of the servant. This, as I've explained in previous weeks, this principle seems counterintuitive for those of us who are in this material world because we want to be the master, the controller, the enjoyer. And here we find that the most effective spiritual methodology is to be the servant of the servant. As Prabhupada writes in the purport, the more one becomes the servant of the servant, the more one becomes perfect in devotional service. Now, you've also heard in the purport something that may sound quite radical to contemporary Western ears. What to speak of ears in India. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings, Tumite Thakur, Toma Kukur, Bulia Janoha More. Oh, my Lord, oh Vaishnav, please consider me your dog. Wait a minute. What about our self-esteem? Why do we want to consider ourselves the dog of a Vaishnava? Isn't this injurious to our psychology? But then when you look at material existence and analyze, you see that 24/7, everyone is becoming the dog of someone. 24/7. At the workplace, you don't want to consider yourself that you're a dog to your boss. But at the university, you don't want to consider that you're the dog of your professor or lecturer. But and remember the famous saying by Muchakunda in Krishna Lila when he's giving his autobiography to Krishna, when he's explaining about his past. He said, as emperor during the day, I sat on my throne and all kinds of subordinate kings would come and bow down, placing their helmets at my feet. That's my position during the day. Mighty ruler, mighty emperor. But then he points out, what happens at night? At night, I have to go to the chamber of my queens and fall at their feet, begging for sense gratification. So we think twice, we think thrice about being the dog of a Vaishnava. But material life is just forcing us to be someone's dog 24/7. But because we think it's for me, I'm getting what I want, or I hope to get what I want. Therefore, it's all right to be a dog for this person or that person. And it's actually not that I'm being a dog, it's just my own arrangement, my own contractual arrangement. So you have to compare. What is the benefit of being subordinate to a material person? And what's the benefit for being subordinate to a spiritual person? So, what the International Society for Krishna Consciousness is attempting to do is create vast quantity of spiritual persons who can give shelter. Giving shelter is not just one person's job. Mm. Krishna is the original spiritual master, and It is his desire, and especially it's his desire as expressed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna himself, that everyone learn the science of Krishna. And on Lord Chaitanya's order, teach the science of Krishna throughout the world. And as I often remind you, this instruction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the same as Lord Krishna saying at the end of Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Dharmam Prajaja Mahamekam Sharanam Braja. Abandon all varieties of what you think is Dharma, religion, and just do what I say. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna saying the same thing. Wherever you go, whomever you meet, teach the science of Krishna on my order.
Don't you teach?
Hare Krishna. So Prahlad is pointing out, my dear Lord, you manage the affairs of the universe. So there's no difficulty for you to deliver fallen souls. You're in charge of the creation, the maintenance, and the annihilation indirectly. So how can there be any hiccup? How can there be any barrier to your being the friend of all suffering humanity? I think you'll show your causeless mercy to persons like us. Prahlad's putting himself in the category of the conditioned souls. Yes. When you see through the eyes of the Shastra, especially Srimad Bhagavatam, you understand that Krishna is always distributing his mercy. And we are always refusing it. We have to adjust our vision from being a materialist, an angry, resentful materialist, to a bhakta, one who can actually see what's going on. To the angry, resentful materialist, for such a person, there's the attitude. Why is the world the way it is? If there is a supreme controller, why does that supreme controller allow such suffering, such frustration, such torture, such horror? But when you see the world through the eyes of a bhakta, you see how the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always trying to arrange for our deliverance. Meanwhile, we are always trying to avoid being delivered. We're expert at avoiding the light of spiritual knowledge, just like the bird, the owl. I don't think owls are native to New Zealand, but owls can't stand sunlight. They love the darkness at night. So we're like that. The light is there, but like owls, we slam our eyes shut. No, no, no. And then when the inevitable disaster of material existence shows its usual face, we get angry and resentful. Why is this happening to me? What kind of God allows this to happen? I've told you before, I haven't mentioned it recently, but I remember as a youth seeing a photo of farmers in Chile in South America where there was an earthquake, a major earthquake. And I saw this photo of an angry farmer raising his fist to the sky. God, how could you do this to us? Mm. Now, we might not think to ever do something so apparently extreme, but we all have our reversals that we go through. We all meet up with various impediments during our journey through this world. And sometimes it's difficult to check the resentment that rises within us. especially if we think, I've been serving Krishna so nicely. Why did this happen? Why did that happen? We have this tendency. Mm. Remember from the Bhagavatam, Hiranyakashipu, Prahlad's father, mm, angry about how Vishnu killed his brother Hiranyaksha. And Hiranyakashipu would, thinking he's looking upward to Vaikuntha, the residence of Vishnu, he would glance upward with such anger in his vision that the sky would start smoking. We'd probably try to do that if we could. Mercy is always coming and we're always dodging it. That's the proper way to see. So Prahlad is saying there's no difficulty for the Supreme Personality Godhead to handle the situation of the fallen souls. After all, the Supreme Personality Godhead manages the affairs of the universe. So, what's going on then? Prahlad is putting the burden on us. We should become the servant of a servant and engage in Krishna's service in that way. Remember the prayers Srila Prabhupada wrote upon arriving in the USA? He wrote, he's writing to Krishna, by your will, the conditioned souls are in Maya. Therefore, you can, if you want, bring them out of Maya. So I'm appealing to you. Please do that. The devotee is appealing to the Supreme Personality Godhead. Please bring them out of Maya. By your power, they've entered into Maya because of their own desire. You're just fulfilling their desire. So now, please allow the opposite to happen. Let them come out of Maya. The most valuable wealth in life we can have is devotional service in parampara. Devotional service involving being the servant of the servant of the servant. So Prahlad is saying there's no difficulty. And indeed, Lord Chaitanya explained that to Vasudev Dutt. You remember in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Vasudev Dutt presented his request to Mahaprabhu. I want to take upon myself all the sinful reactions of everyone in the universe. Let them all go back to Godhead, and I'll take upon myself their suffering. This is an inconceivably impressive desire. And what was Mahaprabhu's response? He said, my dear Vasudev Dutt, do you think it's such a difficult task for the Supreme Lord to liberate everyone in just one tiny universe? All the universes are so tiny. Mahaprabhu explained that if you have a bucket of mustard seeds, all of you who are cooks know how small a mustard seed is. If from the bucket of mustard seeds, one falls out, one little mustard seed falls out, does anyone notice? So similarly, all the living entities in one universe can go back to Godhead, and it's nothing for Krishna to arrange. It's so slight. So you don't have to take upon yourself the sinful reactions of all the fallen jivas in this universe. Krishna can arrange that so easily. And Prahlad is saying the same thing. There's no difficulty for you to arrange the deliverance of fallen souls. But we make the difficulty. We refuse to acknowledge the light. We're creatures who love the darkness and think it's progress, advancement of civilization. So let us consider deeply Prahlad's point. I read to you a few days ago, maybe you weren't here, about Srila Prabhupada's pure devotion in his first year in the USA, in New York, in which nothing was happening. Nothing good was happening, just obstacle after obstacle. So he wrote in his diary after being in the USA, being in New York for 6 months. He was celebrating Gaur Purnima alone. There are no devotees. So he writes in his diary about how, according to the Vaishnav calendar, today is the day before Gaur Purnima. Devotees at Vrindavan and Navadvip are enjoying the celebration. I am here alone without any devotee companion, but I have come here to serve the Lord and not for personal happiness. I am prepared to live in hell, even if I am able to serve the Lord. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted that his mission should be propagated all over the world. And that is my objective. I do not mind the inconvenience personally felt. Then later, after such trials and tribulations, he was situated at the famous 26 Second Avenue, which at the time was such a derelict, run down, down and out place in New York City. Of course, the way real estate works now, it's a very expensive part of New York City. But back then in the 60s, it was the bottom, the pits. Only alcoholics would live there, sprawled on the street day and night. But Srila Prabhupada's contacts led him there. And so now at least he has his own place, a little storefront from where he can preach. So he talks about this in a lecture that he's giving on Second Avenue in that small storefront. He says, "Here I am now sitting in New York, the world's greatest city, such a magnificent city, but my heart is always hankering after that Vrindavan. I shall be very happy to return to my Vrindavan, that sacred place. But then," and he's creating a dialogue between himself and someone else. "But then, why are you here?" "Because it is my duty. I have brought some message for you people. Because I've been ordered by my superior, my spiritual master." And he quotes what his spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, told him. "Whatever you have learned, you should go to the Western countries and you must distribute this knowledge. So in spite of all my difficulties, all my inconveniences, I am here because I am obligated by duty." Such compassion is so far beyond us. And this is what is stored in our parampara. We want the mercy of such devotees like Prahlad Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada. Then we can attract the attention of Nityananda Prabhu, who can be very contradictory. In dealing with Lord Nityananda, it can seem like when he's chastising you, it can seem very bad, but actually he's giving you the greatest mercy. And we'll look at Chaitanya Charitamrita for an example of that. We'll go to chapter 12 of the Anshalila. And Kaviraj Goswami, as always, sets the scene by reminding you that when you hear and chant and meditate upon the life and characteristics of Lord Chaitanya, there'll be great happiness. He offers, of course, his obeisances to Mahaprabhu, to Nityananda, to Advaita Acharya, and to all the devotees, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda, because the Gaur Bhakta Vrinda have hearts filled with mercy. In other words, if we're genuine followers of Mahaprabhu and Nityananda, we have to be merciful. Just as Prahlad Maharaj in his prayer is saying to Lord Nrsingadev, I think you will show your causeless mercy to persons like us who engage in your service. And the devotee takes that mercy, nourishes herself with it, and then gives it to others. And in that way, you attract the attention of Sri Nityananda Prabhu, who helps you to attract the attention of Mahaprabhu. So we're going to deal with Navadvip and the journey of the Navadvip Vasis, the annual journey to Puri. And Kaviraj Goswami is going to give you insight into what's going on in Puri, a brief, concise insight in terms of the days and nights of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He only mentions it in a few verses at this point, this chapter, but it's enough to cause you to meditate endlessly. He writes, the mind of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was always morose because of a continuously manifested feeling of separation from Krishna. This separation from Krishna, Viraha Bhava, is the crest jewel of the parampara. You may recall in the Krishna book, Prabhupada writes that it's the duty of those in the parampara to enrich their disciples with feelings of separation from Krishna. So therefore, don't rush through these verses in Chaitanya Charitamrita thinking they'll never apply to you. You'll never know the slightest of what these verses are about. By reading, as you serve, as you execute practical devotional service, these verses penetrate deeper and deeper into your consciousness. So this feeling of separation of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu becomes such a dominant possession, a dominant property of yours. And Kaviraj Goswami describes how Lord Chaitanya would cry. Aha Krishna Prananath Rajendra Nandan Kahan Yan Kahan Pan Murali Vadan. Oh, my Lord Krishna, oh, my life and soul, oh, son of Maharaj Nanda, where shall I go? Where shall I attain you? Oh, Supreme Personality, who play with your flute, who plays with your flute to your mouth. So day and night, this was the consciousness of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And especially at night was difficulty for him. Difficulty in terms of feelings of separation. But those are not material difficulties. Those are the acute difficulties of the highest stage of spiritual bliss. Obviously, we're not going to understand that without purified consciousness. So at night, Mahaprabhu would be in the company of Srup Damodar and Ramananda Roy, those intimate devotees. And there he would pour out his heart in separation from Krishna. Because as you know, he's Krishna in the role of Krishna's devotee, particularly in the role of Srimati Radharani. And the heart of Mahaprabhu is the emotion of Srimati Radharani. So that's what's going on in Puri. During the day, Mahaprabhu would go to the temple, Lord Jagannath's temple, and do Harinam Sankirtan. And at night, he would pour out his heart confidentially in separation from Krishna. But what's going on in Navadvip? It's time for the devotees there to make their annual pilgrimage to Jagannath Puri to associate with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So first, they assembled. Their organizer is Shivananda Sain. So all the devotees, including Advaita Acharya, would gather together. And this time, Nityananda also joined the group, although Mahaprabhu had ordered him, don't come to Puri. I need you to preach in Bengal and what is now Bangladesh. You can do a job that even I can't do. But Nityananda Prabhu is contradictory. So he's showing up anyway for the trip to Puri. So first, the devotees took the blessings of Shachi Mata, Lord Chaitanya's mother. And then their total number was 200 or 300. And they're walking to Puri. And the whole trip is organized by Shivananda Sain. He organized where the devotees would spend at night, and he would pay the tolls because the roads had tolls, even if you walked. Just like if you drive a car on a toll road, you got to pay. So similarly, the landowners who maintained the roads wanted to profit, and so they charged tolls, and Shivananda Sain managed the payments. And Shivananda Sain knew all the paths leading to Puri. This is an annual trip. So one day, as they're proceeding on their journey, there was some negotiation with a toll collector, which of course was Shivananda Sain's department dealing with such. And so the devotees went to rest underneath a tree and waited for Shivananda Sain to finish the transaction with the toll collector. They were waiting because it's getting near night, and they knew Shivananda Sain arranges for them to spend the night somewhere. So they're waiting. But meanwhile, Nityananda Prabhu is getting upset. He's very hungry. So you might say, wait a minute. Hunger and becoming upset and intolerant are symptoms of a material body. But for Nityananda Prabhu, who is Balaram himself, these are just his all spiritual, transcendental behaviors. You can't lock up Nityananda in some category. He's beyond category. He specializes in showing that. That's why he's called Nityananda Avaduta. And Avaduta conforms to no social standards of behavior, no social expectations. That's Nityananda. So he's become apparently upset. He's hungry, and he's wondering, where's my residence for the night? Where's my residence for the night? Again, you might be thinking, what kind of Paramahansa is this? He's supposed to be beyond all material circumstances. But this is just part of Nityananda's ecstasy. So in that ecstasy, he begins to call Shivananda bad names. Not only did he call him bad names, but he goes even further. He says, Shivananda Sain has not arranged for my residence. So, and I'm so hungry I could die. Therefore, because he hasn't come, I curse his 3 sons to die. Is he for real? I'm so hungry I could die. What kind of Paramahansa is this? Because he's not arranged my residence and my meal tonight, I curse his 3 sons to die. This is very serious. What do you think Shivananda Sain's wife thought? Nityananda has just cursed her 3 boys to die. He's not joking, apparently. Of course. She's devastated. She begins to cry. And now Shivananda Sain's returned from finishing the toll transaction. And so, of course, his wife is going to be onto him immediately, as you can well understand. She's crying, telling him, Lord Nityananda has cursed our sons to die because his quarters haven't been provided. What was Shivananda Sain's response? It'd be hard for you to swallow this. He replies, you crazy woman, why are you needlessly crying? Let my 3 sons die for all the inconvenience we've caused Nityananda Prabhu. Is this for real? But what you're hearing is the supremacy of bhakti. Shivananda Sain means that. He knows bhakti is beyond birth and death, beyond the coming and going of the body. And he knows that Nityananda Prabhu's pleasure is the everything. We have to think about this. It's a pastime, a leela that requires deep thought. Did we ever say such a thing? Let my 3 sons die for all the inconvenience we've caused Nityananda Prabhu. After telling his wife this, Shivananda Sain approaches Nityananda Prabhu. And what happens then? Nityananda Prabhu stands up and kicks him. Now, those of you from India know that touching someone with your foot is considered an insult. It's considered very offensive. So Nityananda Prabhu kicks Shivananda Sain. And what is the reaction of Shivananda Sain? Oh, how glorious. First, Shivananda Sain quickly arranges for a residence for Nityananda Prabhu at some milkman's house. While he's doing that, making those arrangements, he's feeling very pleased. I've been kicked by Nityananda. My Nityananda's foot has touched me. But as he's rejoicing that way, he's making his managemental arrangements. And so then when those arrangements are completely made, Shivananda Sain approaches Nityananda again, touches Nityananda's lotus feet, and escorts him to the residence of Nityananda for that night. And he's still feeling increasingly pleased. The Shivananda saying tells Nityananda, today you've accepted me as your servant and have properly punished me for my offense. My dear Lord, your chastising me is your causeless mercy. Who within the three worlds could understand your real character? And he starts talking about the Chatana Renu, the dust from the lotus feet of Nityananda. Nitai Pada Kamala, Koti Chandra Shushitala. The lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, more soothing than millions of moons. Shivananda Sain says that even Brahma cannot attain the dust of your lotus feet. Yet my wretched body has been touched by your lotus feet. Therefore, Shivananda Sain goes on, everything in my life is successful today. My dharma, my religion, my artha, my economic development, my kama, the satisfaction of my senses, and moksha, devotional service to Krishna. It's all successful today because I've been touched by the lotus feet of Nityananda. What was Nityananda Prabhu's reaction hearing this? He's very happy and he embraces Shivananda Sain in great love. This is his contradictory nature. When he's angry and kicks someone, he's actually bestowing the greatest benefit. This is why bhakti is mysterious for outsiders. They look and see that a devotee is apparently going through illness or even death, and they think, what's the use of your bhakti? They don't see the inner treasures. They don't see the spiritual reality. Shivananda Sain understood. I am receiving the greatest mercy, although externally it looks like I've been insulted. I've been kicked, touched by someone's foot. My sons have been cursed to die. But he's seeing what's really going on. And Nityananda is so pleased by Shivananda Sain's vision. And by the way, in case you're wondering, the three sons didn't die. Naturally, mothers would be concerned. Okay, Maharaj, yes, that sounds great, but what about those three boys? So continuing about the glories of devotees, I've been asked to speak something about one direct disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lokanath Goswami. He first met Mahaprabhu in Navadvip after he renounced his householder life. When you talk about Lokanath Goswami, you also have to talk about Bhugarba. Bhugarba Goswami and Lokanath Goswami were like two persons in one body. Or, no, one person in two bodies. They're always together. So Lokanath Goswami went to Navadvip to meet Mahaprabhu, who told him, go live in Vrindavan, because very soon I'll be taking sannyas. And when Lokanath Goswami heard that, he began to cry, visualizing the Lord with a shaved head, no more of that beautiful curly hair. And Lokanath Goswami knew the distress the devotees would feel when Lord Chaitanya would leave home. So Lokanath Goswami went to Vrindavan, accompanied by Bhugarba Goswami. They walked to Vrindavan, of course, no trains, no planes. And While in Vrindavan, Lokanath Goswami always felt separation from Mahaprabhu. And news came to Vrindavan that Mahaprabhu indeed had taken sannyas and was on pilgrimage. First, he went to Puri and then to South India. So, what did Lokanath Goswami do? He took off walking to South India to join Mahaprabhu. He walks all the way from Vrindavan in the north to South India. Then, when he gets to South India, he hears that Mahaprabhu is no longer there, but's gone to Vrindavan. So, Lokanath Goswami walks all the way back to Vrindavan, hoping to see Mahaprabhu there. But when he arrives in Vrindavan, he's told Mahaprabhu is now in Prayag. Lokanath Goswami is very disappointed transcendentally, but he decides, let me take off for Prayag. But before he could do that, Mahaprabhu appears to him in a dream and tells him, stop going from here to there and there to here. Remain in Vrindavan and do your bhajan. And soon thereafter, Rupa, Sanatan, Gopal Bhatt Goswamis, and others of that caliber arrived in Braj to live. And by their association, they nourished Lokanath Goswami. We can remember about Lokanath Goswami that he was so conscientious about name and fame. He didn't want his name recorded in Chaitanya Charitamrita. That's why you don't read about him in Chaitanya Charitamrita. There are no descriptions of his presence, even though he's a direct disciple of Mahaprabhu. He told Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, don't write about me in your book. So you only see mention of his name briefly, but nothing more. This is very interesting because so many of our acharyas have pointed out that renouncing the desire for fame, appreciation, acclaim is more difficult than giving up lust. If you successfully tolerated the whiplashes of lust, still you've got to deal with the desire for appreciation, acclaim, prestige. Even though you're not living a material life, you think, I deserve fame and acclaim and appreciation because of my spiritual attainments. This is the hardest to give up. And therefore, Lokanath Goswami told Kaviraj Goswami, I forbid you to mention anything about me in your book. Lokanath Goswami is famous for his Radhavino deity, and he's also famous for having only one disciple, Narottam Das Thakur. Lokanath Goswami had taken a vow, I will not initiate any disciples. But Narottam Das had also made a vow that I will take initiation from no one except Lokanath Goswami. So what's going to happen here? Both were firm, Narottam Das and Lokanath Goswami. So Narottam Das Thakur made a plan. He found the place where Lokanath Goswami would pass stool. And every night, Narottam Das would sneak into that place and clean it up, make it immaculate. So, of course, Lokanath Goswami in the morning when he went to relieve himself was surprised to see who's cleaning this place so nicely. Who's doing this? Morning after morning, he noticed. So one evening he decided, I'm going to hide out and catch who this person is. I'll hide in the bushes, chanting japa the entire night, waiting for this secret benefactor. So at midnight, he saw who it was. Someone came to clean the stool passing place. He asked, who are you? Narottam identified himself. And Narottam fell at Lokanath's feet, saying, what's the use in my life? What's the use in living if I can't attain your mercy? So that determination of Narottam Das softened Lokanath's resolve. And although he had vowed to never give anyone initiation, he did so for the sake of Narottam Das. So Narottam Das is showing how to be the servant. So today you'll find the Samadhi tomb of Lokanath Goswami in the Radha Gokulananda temple in Vrindavan, where his Radhavino deity is also there. So we're purified by hearing and discussing the glories of Prahlad Maharaj, Lokanath Goswami, Narottam Das, Ugarbha Goswami, Prahlad Maharaj. If we can just get a drop of their mercy, our life is successful. All right, we have time for perhaps one or two questions.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, once again, thank you so much for your time and driving into the nectarian pastime of Shiva Prahlad and also sharing about Lokanath Maharaj. So thank you so much. To all the devotees, if there's any questions, you're most welcome to ask. Just please unmute yourself and you can ask. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Gurudev. I have a question. I was wondering, how do we deal with indifference in our japa when we notice that, one of the main problems we have is that we actually don't care about chanting properly?
It's very good that you notice that. That's a sign of advancement. Otherwise, why would you notice? You notice because you care. So you want to deepen the relationship with Nam Prabhu. So you try to focus more and you have the mood of a beggar and also read about the glories of the holy name. So I'm glad that devotees are noticing their indifference. The Hare Krishna mantra, Krishna and the deity are all spiritual and are all the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So may you continue to observe your chanting and aspire to chant with more and more sensitivity, dependency, like a child depending on mother. And in this way, our service will become more conscientious and sensitive. As I often explain, attentive devotional service feeds into attentive chanting, and attentive chanting feeds into attentive devotional service. So I'm glad that devotees are noticing. I'm so indifferent and heartless about my chanting. That they notice that means they care. Any other questions?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the nice class. Dandavat Pranam. May I ask Maharaj, we constantly say that we want to serve or we want to become the servant of the servant. In that pursuit, sometimes we do not know who actually we're serving, in the sense that we come to a point where we realize that, oh, we actually not serving them spiritually, but started serving them materially, because we want them to take on the spiritual path. So what should be the definition of Maharaj of when we're saying we need to serve, become the servant of the servant?
Can you give me an example of what you mean by serving materially because we want them to serve spiritually? Can you give an example?
Yes, Maharaj. So, for example, we preach this holy message that, okay, Krishna is a supreme. Then someone likes that lecture and they now associate with you more. And then you try giving them more videos and the books that they need to read. And suddenly they will say, okay, could you help me by dropping me to the uni, or could you help me in my project management, some of the scenarios that you might have experience with? And then you start deviating, and then it comes to the point where you feel like the person is still saying that, you understand situation more, and maybe Krishna has got you in the life to help, to bring help for me, and once my life settles, so I can serve Krishna more in that way. And then you start to question your own commitment to preaching.
Yes, you have to understand what is the best service. The best service is to help someone to take up the process of bhakti. That doesn't mean you can't give them a helping hand in terms of dealing with various factors of their life, but you always have to keep in the center the need for them to engage in devotional service. So whatever you do, you have that goal in the back of your mind. It's the same with household affairs. Householders have to deal with work and homes and home maintenance and transport. But in the back of their mind, they're thinking, though they should be thinking, how devotional service can benefit, if not immediately, then gradually, ultimately, from all that I'm doing. So you have to keep the goal in mind and calculate for Krishna. How much is Krishna getting out of this? This is not being selfish. This is being really selfless when you're always calculating on behalf of Krishna. So you watch and see. You don't want to be caught up in aiding someone's material development. At the same time, if by giving a little helping hand, the person will increase in their bhakti, well, then you can consider that. Of course, in family affairs, one has to be responsible. Even in one's own family affairs, you're always thinking, a devotee's always thinking, what is Krishna getting from all this? Yes, I must do my duty, but how to do my duty in such a way that Krishna is in the center? So what you're saying requires mature deliberation. We don't want to be fanatical one way or the other. We just keep our eye on devotional service and measure what we're doing in that way. All right.
Thank you,
So
Maharaj.
I thank you all for your association.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, once again, thank you so much for taking your time out and being with us. I would like to just request His Grace Namraj Prabhu to please conclude from here. Namraj Prabhu.
Hi, Hare Krishna, Devamrita Maharaj. Thank you very much again on behalf of the devotees on this platform and all the listeners for your valuable time and association. You've been a very regular contributor and we really appreciate your contribution and association. Thank you, Maharaj. We'd like to see you again more often. Hare Krishna. So we have a Shinga prayer. This we sing.
Namaste Narasimhaya Praladalada Hiranyakashipu